Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back in with you guys for another show, another episode of our Raw Reaction show. The show in which we obviously react to the latest Arsenal news that's going on around the world. And basically what happens with this is basically nothing happens for a few days. And then the world explodes into what has been a quite manic day in terms of Arsenal news. Unfortunately, nothing to do with signings of actually officially anyone signing for the club, but so much happening in terms of controversies, in terms of player deals, in terms of talks beginning with others. And we're going to talk about all of them and obviously get your thoughts and your reactions from our live chat. Everyone in the live chat, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. Please give the show a like if you're enjoying the shows and enjoying what we've been doing the show recently. I much appreciate it. And subscribe if you're new, of course. But let's talk about what we're here to talk about, which is many things that have happened over the last 24 hours or so. The first thing I want to talk about is one which is quite easy to quell immediately. Thank you everyone who's in the chat. I am looking at it, don't you worry. And that is the Zaha stuff. Now, I put a video up the other day about Wilfried Zaha, about the fact that Arsenal were going in for him a little bit more, that the deal was sort of still alive, and that we were in fact trying to negotiate something where that we would invest with a few players rather than just with money. And that is seemingly what has begun to happen. And the reports are that Arsenal have offered El Neni, Chambers and Cole Jenkinson plus about £40 million to sign Wilfried Zaha. There's two sides to this, really. One side is that it's absolutely ridiculous, and that's offering three players plus £40 million in cash. When you're talking about people being worth an amount of money, it's crazy to think that you can swap one guy for three plus 40 million. Imagine your mentality if you're one of those three players, to think that you're not enough and you need two other players plus 40 million pounds for you to be worth anywhere near this other person. It must be an incredible feeling, in a negative way. My thoughts are is that I don't think it will happen. I don't think Zaha is going to sign this summer. I don't think he's worth 80 odd million, which is what we would need to play. What I'm interested in, though, is obviously because there are stumbling blocks to this deal with the sell-on clause. By including players in the deal, I'm intrigued to know how that would affect a sell-on clause. Does that mean that for a quarter of the season, Mohamed El Neni has to go spend some time at United? I have absolutely no idea how it would work because of that. I assume they would just get 25% of the actual financial fee that goes into it, but it seems a very sneaky way around that. But unfortunately, that's the only way that Arsenal would seemingly be able to do a deal, is by offering up some players in response to what has been a rejected £40 million bid. But the fact that we went in with initial official reported bid of £40 million to then turn around and think that, oh, that's not enough, let's throw three of our players on top of that, is an absolutely maddening sort of thing to look at. Let's see what some of you guys are saying in the chat. Bulgarian Guna says Zaha is not worth it. Don't understand what the club sees in him when there is other options available who are just as good or better and cheap. It's a very fair point. There's plenty of players out there who play on the wing Arsenal have been linked to that are less money, such as Hakim Ziyech, who I know is an out-and-out winger, but I know can play centrally, but has done very well on that right wing for Ajax last season. You've then got Malcolm, of course, of Barcelona, that we've been linked to about a possible loan with an obligation to buy, but he is, over the last couple of days, seemingly got much more accustomed to staying at Barcelona, unless Neymar, of course, returns to the Nou Camp. And then you've got the likes of Ryan Fraser. Now, Ryan Fraser is someone that I've raved about a lot. I did, obviously, a video and a tactical breakdown comparing Zaha and Fraser to each other, and Fraser certainly covers himself in plenty of glory. He provides a lot of chances. People say he can't dribble, which is a complete myth. He can certainly dribble, and he shows that in the stats which I presented to you guys in that video. But obviously he doesn't give us the same dribbling ability that Zaha does. But does that mean he's worth £50 million less? I don't think so. Of course, there's contractual issues with that. But obviously, at the end of the day, if you're offering that amount of money for a player, there's so much more you can do with it. Clearly, Unai Emery is a massive fan. Otherwise, we wouldn't be going in this much. But to see him going for that amount of money and worth the likes of Chambers, who Chambers is obviously an English player. He had a player of the season at Fulham last year. You think he'd be worth between 20 and 30 for his age as well. So the fact that they think he's worth it on top of Cole Jenkinson and El Neni is a bit strange. Willie Skulls says, I'll defend it. He offered to pay his own wages. Oh, we're talking about Koscielny. We'll come on to that in a minute, so I'll come back to that in a second. But just to sort of finish the chat on Zaha, I don't think we'll sign him. And D Fan V says that I wouldn't offer more than £40 million for him. He says he wouldn't offer more than £40 initially before he's corrected himself, which, to be honest, a lot of people might agree with you. They don't want him at the club at all. They think he's a player that's basically got a lot of running in him, but with no real end product. But he did obviously score 10 goals and get 10 assists last season, which is a really, really good return in my opinion. And he is someone that I think that we would need in the club. Someone that I think that would provide something different. But I think there's other players and other options out there which Arsenal could go for instead. So that sort of draws a line under where I'm at with Zaha. I don't think he's going to sign for Arsenal somewhere. I think that we're going to go for someone else. I actually think that we'll attempt to bring in more than just the one attacking player. And obviously, I don't think that it's anything that we need to worry about. So when we're talking about something like Zaha, we can put that to one side for now and let's talk about something else, which is going to be the next thing, which is the Ceballos talks. Now, Ceballos was supposedly in talks with Tottenham Hotspur, of course, earlier on in the season, and so now he's being linked with Arsenal. We're now willing to rival Tottenham Hotspur for his signing, which is great in my opinion. Obviously, I did a video on Dani Ceballos and I did a tactical breakdown on him, which you can go check out on the channel as to what I think of the Spaniard. But in short, I think he's an absolutely fantastic player. I think he's someone that would easily replace Ramsey in terms of that position. I think he adds so much more depth and dribbling ability and a really good set-piece delivery as well. We're desperately crying out for someone who can actually beat that first man at corners and who can get the ball around the wall and free kicks, and he's certainly got the ability to do that. He's very, very good on the ball. He knows how to find a through pass. He can spot passes really, really well. And I think were you to add him into this team for next season, it would definitely be someone that we should be looking out for in terms of making a signature. Now, the deal is arguably a loan rather than an extended permanent signing. But I just think in terms of what he does, he offers obviously a lot going into next season. We're going to be bringing in hopefully more players and help us qualify for the Champions League. If it is just a loan and we can focus on using our money elsewhere, like in the defence or bringing in the likes of Kieran Tierney, then obviously I think it's a lot better and it's a lot something that we don't need to worry about as much because I think you can spend money elsewhere and I think that'd be great. So bringing in someone on loan like Ceballos would be really, really beneficial for the club. Quite a short bit on him because it's only talks at the moment. I really hope the deal happens, but we'll just have to wait and see. Moving forward then, obviously we've got to talk about Laurent Koscielny. Now, Laurent Koscielny, obviously a long-time servant at the club, club captain, has been for many seasons now. Suffered a horrific injury in the Europa League semi-final against Atletico Madrid, not last season, but the season prior, and received a huge outpouring of support from the fan base. The documentary that they made on him and all of that stuff was made, and it seemed that we would really back this guy and defend him to the hilt effectively, and the fact that he's been a great servant. Now, this is completely flipped now. This is completely flipped down to the fact that he has refused to join up with the Arsenal team on the tour, which is, it's when I saw the headline, part of me thought, oh, okay, I kind of get that because he wants to move and he wants to move on and get more regular football in a team in France and return to his homeland to play with the likes of Rennes or what was the other one that was linked? It was Rennes and Bordeaux, I believe was the other one. And he's now reportedly agreed personal terms, should I say, with Rennes, and that could be a possible place that he could go to. But I just think that when we're talking about someone like Koscielny, you need to think about him positively, because I think you need to consider what he's done for the club. But you also need to be objective about what you're saying, and you need to understand that this person, being Koscielny, has basically, as club captain, told round and put his middle finger up to the club, because to say that you're not going to go on the Arsenal tour and you're going to refuse to do that as club captain is not exactly setting the best example. It's not exactly showing the club the same amount of respect and faith that they have showed him, bringing him back from injury, helping him with his therapy, helping him with his rehabilitation. So to turn around and go down this route is quite ugly, and I'm not really a big fan of it. I want to get your guys' thoughts in the chat box. Now, there was some comments on him earlier, which I'm going to scroll up to. But it's really, really good to see that so many of you are in the chat and are discussing this, which is great. Football Fan Chat says, hi mate, Koscielny should leave for Lyon. Player power is too strong in the game at the moment. Absolute idiot. And what example does that show? I think the example thing is an absolutely huge thing. Michael Hernandez, good friend of the show. Hi, Michael. Thanks for tuning in, mate. He says, would be ideal if Kos left to Saint Etienne and we got Saliba this season. Yeah, in a dream world, that might happen, but I think it's for sure that he will be leaving. And Willie Scales, obviously, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says, as he said earlier, he wanted to defend it, and he says, defend it. He's offered to pay his wages, and he's given 10 years and 255 games for us. That plus, we shouldn't be trying to hold on to someone who doesn't want to be here. Now, I agree with you. I agree that we shouldn't be trying to hold on to someone that doesn't want to be here. And to be honest, I don't think that we are trying to hold on to someone that is necessarily going to leech the club for any amount of money, because he's not. And that's why we've got these stories about him trying to obviously stay at the club, and obviously got these stories about him trying to buy out his contract, which you can understand because he's got the money and he's built up that amount of money that he needs to, and so therefore he doesn't need to stay at the club for the amount of money that we were paying on his contract. But we've activated the year option in his contract, and that year option has meant that we now keep him for the remainder of next season. Now, he seemingly thought in the reports in The Guardian that have been going on that he wasn't actually going to stay. He wasn't going to stay at the club this season. It was sort of agreed that he'd be allowed to leave on a free, and that ultimately has left him in a bad place and a bad food for thought about it when it's turned around to him and said that, no, we're not going to let you leave, we're going to keep you. But I completely understand the club's stance on this. Arsenal are strapped for cash, supposedly, and need any amount of money that they can bring in. They've seen the likes of Ramsey leave for free. We saw plenty of players in the last few seasons leave for a very small amount of money. And so therefore, if we are going to re-sign him onto a year contract, I can only imagine, although we had the complete right intentions of thinking that we were going to move him on and let him leave, but we weren't going to do it without getting some little money in for him. And I think that's completely fair enough for the club to turn around and say, yes, let's put our foot down and say, we're not going to let you leave unless we get a little bit of money for it. And that's completely fair, I think. As Bulgarian Guna says there, nobody is bigger than Arsenal, and I have to obviously agree with that statement. But I don't think he'll get what he wants. If he buys out his contract, that's fair enough. Arsenal will get a fair amount of money, a couple of million or so, for that, which is positive. I would rather, if he went for a fee rather than moving off for free, because we need the money to reinvest in the club in certain areas. But I just think that there's a lot more to come out from this story. Whether or not that means that Arsenal are going to lose out and lose a bit of face in this, and Koscielny's going to lose a lot of respect from the fans, which I think has started to happen already, then maybe so be it, and that's what has to happen. Sometimes football gets a bit ugly, but we've just got to deal with that. But let's answer some of your questions now in the chat before I close off the stream. It's been good to see so many of you are in here and get some of your thoughts. Wilson, good friend of the show, says Koscielny was totally out of order for refusing to take part in the pre-season with the squad. As our club captain is an absolute disgrace. Again, it is disgraceful to say that he was refusing it. I think he probably should have gone out there and then let the contract talks and obviously the transfer dealings talks happen while he was there. Going out to the American tour does not then put you off or put you out of any possible transfer deal. It doesn't. Many players have joined up with players on tours after signing for them. Many players have left tours to go and sign for other players. So I don't think that it was the right decision for him to turn around and say that. Here we go. Mr. Arsenal podcast says the reason he wants to leave on a free is so that he gets a signing on fee, whereas the club just want to sell him and recoup some funds. If that's very true, then it's an extremely selfish act by Koscielny, but obviously we've got to take everything with a pinch of salt. Patrick Kubiak says we will sign another centre-back now, or will we sign another centre-back, considering we have a good few of them at the club already. Mustafi, Holding, Socrates, Mavropanos and Bielik. Yeah, Bielik is technically more of a centre defensive mid and played a lot there this season for Charlton. But I see what you mean. But I think everyone can agree that we need defensive additions. We need an upgrade on the centre-backs that we have. And even though that we are signing Saliba, it seems next season will be into the first team, Arsenal, as David Ornstein said, are still in for a centre-back to be joining up with the first team squad and going straight into the first team this summer. So I think that we will still be in for a centre-back. I think we will try to sign someone, no matter if Koscielny stayed or left. That's just what it is. Where are we at now? Lundberg says, this epitomises the Arsenal captaincy since Vieira. Arsenal captaincy has always been a bit of an issue throughout this. It's always been a bit of a problem. And so therefore, moving on from the likes of Vieira and Tony Adams to Henry and then Fabregas and all these other people, has not meant that we at the club have been acceptable and have been able to bring someone who's been to inspire and marshal the back line or marshal the midfield. Bringing in someone like Arteta. Yes, Arteta was a classy captain, but he's not going to be the person to come in and inspire anyone particularly, is he? He's not going to be the guy that's going to be shouting and screaming at the players and getting them doing what the manager wants. For me, he's a very level-headed bloke and knows how to handle himself, but I don't think he's someone to inspire the team moving forward, and that's why we ultimately didn't succeed in that area with Arteta as captain. I think there is plenty of options in this current side for captain. There's now there's a little bit of a controversial one. I think that Hector Bellerin is up there for what a lot of people said that could have been a captain. Now that splits people down the middle. People think that I've got a pretty poor opinion of Hector Bellerin. I personally think that he's an Arsenal man through and through. He likes the club. He wants to stay at the club moving forwards, and he's passionate about Arsenal. And why that couldn't mean that he could be a captain for several years to come and be there? Why not? Socrates as captain is something else has been suggested in the chat there by Nick NW2, and I can understand that because he's got that very much that. He's got very much the build and presence of a captain, but I just don't think that he's the personality. I like him a lot, but he's not really the type to inspire the team in terms of that defensive ethic. He's not an Arsenal man. He's obviously someone who came from Dortmund very late in his career, and I much prefer if it was someone who's really connected to the club. That's just how I see it. Enough for players leaving for free at the club. He can buy off his contract if he wants. That's what Alexander thinks. Glenn Cook says, I saw Bielik and Amici were left out of the US tour squad. Do you think this is a mistake when you consider Bellerin and Holding are going there injured? I was hoping to see them myself. I was really irritated by the fact that Bielik isn't on the tour. There are people turning around to me on Twitter and saying that that's down to the fact that he was obviously involved in the under-21 tournament with Poland, and I understand that. But at the same time, so was Reiss Nelson. And whilst you sit around and say he didn't play that many games, Reiss Nelson, yeah, but a lot of training goes on. He hasn't received as much of a break as a lot of the other players, and yet he's still been included on the tour. Now, Amici is obviously a player that's been in the news for a little bit. He's been linked with a move away from Arsenal. He was apparently very irritated that Unai Emery left him out of the squad for the Europa League final, and instead decided to take another goalkeeper on top of Leno being the backup behind Cech, of course, than bringing in Amici, and that's meant that he's been basically wanting away from Arsenal for a bit. So does it surprise me? No, it doesn't. I think he's on the way out, which is a shame. But if he is on the way out, then hopefully we can get a little bit of money on for him. I don't know how many years left on his contract he has. I'm assuming it's not too many. But hopefully we can get in some money. Will Martinelli affect Saka, Nelson or Rose development in your opinion? Michael Hernandez says. I mean, at the end of the day, in terms of youth players, it's all a competition. In terms of affecting development, players develop best when we know that they do on the pitch, play it during that 90 minutes. That's the best time for their development to happen. I think that Martinelli is a fantastic talent and an absolutely fantastic buy and a really cheap bargain for the player, for the amount of money that we paid for him. Will it affect Saka's development? Arguably, yes. I think it would be extremely naive to turn around and say that it wouldn't affect their development. I think to say that it's not going to affect their development as a player when you're 18 years old and you're being bought for £6 million, then obviously you're going to turn around and say that, well, why would I bother when you've signed someone for £6 million? What am I going to do here? I'm clearly not in your thoughts. And that might be what Saka is thinking, but maybe we can get this guy on a new contract. Nelson's a different story. Nelson's more of a right-sided winger, whereas Martinelli's certainly more left and can play, of course, centrally. And so, therefore, I don't think it affects Nelson. Again, with Smith Rowe, I just think with Smith Rowe, if you're looking at someone like Smith Rowe, he's more of a central player as a centre attacking midfielder. And so, therefore, if you're a centre attacking midfielder, you're not going to be worried about a left winger like Martinelli coming in. Joe Willock's obviously a centre midfielder as well, so it doesn't affect him. But Saka's the only real one I see it affecting. And I haven't seen too much of Saka play. Apparently, he's been ripping up in the under-23s. He had a couple of substitute appearances for Arsenal last season, but never really caught my eye. Similarly with, of course, Eddie Nketiah. But that's just where I basically see it. I just think in terms of where you're going to move forward with these type of things, you've got to just be ruthless. If someone's going to come in and do really well for the club, then you've got to do the best that you can. So moving forwards, where do I see this club next season with the type of players that we could be signing based on today's video? I think that Ceballos would be an absolutely fantastic signing to replace Ramsey. I think that Zaha is not going to be at Arsenal next season, and I think that Koscielny is acting a little bit I don't want to say off the rails, but I just don't think he's particularly anything like we need him to be as club captain. The behaviour that he's showing at the moment isn't what we really need during a really important summer training session, especially going away for the tour. Who would be the next captain? I'm really not sure. I think there's plenty of players, and maybe we could do a video on possible captaincies. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please subscribe if you're new. Please give it a like if you're enjoying the content much recently. The comments have been great as always, so leave your views. Obviously, this is live right now, but if you're watching back, you got an opportunity to leave a really good comment and get some debate flowing in the comment section below. So please do. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.